Hello Adele, hello Michelle, welcome back to Beaver curling Logtossers. Nobody requested this episode, but I kind of want to keep this hobby going, especially as I am now almost out of knitting wool, so I don't really have much to do at the moment. So I thought I would send you guys another review from here in Seville. First of all, apologies. I share a flat with like 10 other people, so I assume all of them can currently hear me, and so I'm about to have what is probably a 2-hour conversation with myself, but you may hear house noises, and also we live right next to a construction site, so if you hear any construction noises, what else can I do apart from like soundproofing my room? So just, yeah, noises. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a long review. This is legitimately, I am expecting a 2-hour review of this because I am reviewing Bridgerton Season 2. Yeah, so first of all, spoiler alert, of course, anyone watching this, I don't know who would be listening to this, but it's a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen Bridgerton Season 2 and spoilers matter to you because you watched the trailer but you don't know how it's going to end, yeah, spoiler alert, I'm just going to be talking through the entire season and what I thought about every single thing. I didn't review Season 1, there is no Season 1 review. So I guess like a mini review is that it was fine. I understand it's not like a great TV program, but it's enjoyable, it's escapism, it's easy. It does have many of the problems. Some of these problems, which I'm going to talk about later in this review, did exist in Season 1 and weren't fixed in this season. But I would say Season 1, it was enjoyable, it was easy, it was nice. Season 2, I think, was a noteworthy step down from that. I think Season 2 was a fair bit worse than Season 1, although it might just be that I've kind of romanticised Season 1, or maybe the charm has worn off or something. Anyway, I much preferred Season 1 to Season 2. I could do like a whole review if you guys wanted me to, but like we'll save that for another day. Okay, so here I've got a little summary of Bridgerton Season 2. So in Season 2 of Bridgerton, we are introduced to the Sharma sisters. One of our leads is Kate Sharma, who always puts family first and struggles how she goes about it. In her mission of protecting her family in her father's place after his death, she makes mistakes which cost her and never does anything for her own good, leading to tensions and rifts which she cannot repair with logic but with her heart. So that is Kate. Meanwhile, Anthony is, and pardon my French, mum, if you're listening to this, Anthony is fucking shit up and burning shit down. Anthony this season, I'll get onto him, but oh my god, Anthony this season was just a mess. The show still has plenty of charm and charisma. It still looks gorgeous, but I don't think it improved the issues I had in Season 1. And I think the main issue with this season is that it felt a lot slower and very melodramatic. Also, when writing these reviews, normally I will watch something with my notebook and take notes as I'm going through and pick up on things. I didn't do that this time. The only reason I'm reviewing this is just because I've just watched it at the weekend. So I thought I'd do a review because I'd like to review something at the moment. I've got thoughts about this, so I thought it would be a nice easy thing to review. I don't remember everything that happened. I'm not going to be right about everything that happened, and I'm not going to remember. I'm sorry, I can hear the drill next door. I'm not going to remember anything, but yeah, let's just get on with it. I'm going to start with my overall issues with the show. I do have a section of things that I liked in the show, but I wanted to talk through some of the issues I really had. So issue number 1 was that I found this season too glamorous. Last season was glamorous. It was beautiful, it was gorgeous, lovely to watch. Everything had a bit of a glow up in Season 2, and it kind of looked weird to me as it lost a lot of the sort of pastel shades in the first season for a very vibrant, deep appearance this season. So it was so glamorous that it kind of looked surreal and fake. First season I thought was at least a bit grounded, but this season everything was just too much. It was kind of like, it kind of felt like the before photo of, you know, those makeover shows where they get the woman who wear way too much makeup and wear like 6 earrings and loads of jewelry and the like most expensive clothes, and actually they're like, well, actually if you kind of toned it down a bit you would look better. It kind of looks like the before photo of those makeover shows where it's too much, and I kind of wanted them to tone down the glamour a bit. Also, one frequent issue is that their sort of day wear and the costumes they wear when they're going out or going to parties are very, very similar. So you don't get the glamour of the parties. It all just kind of looks the same. I think they could do with more of a distinction with the costumes. Sometimes you get a bit of a difference, such as when you see Edwina and Kate sort of together a lot, and they might be in their sort of pyjamas, they're relaxed, their hair's down, versus them being at a party or a dinner or something. There's a bit of distinction there, but I think on the whole they could have done a bit more with the costuming of deciphering between when they're really relaxed and, you know, maybe getting ready for bed or stuff like that, when they're just lounging around the house, or when they're at maybe a dinner or at an event, and when they're at a party. I would like different tiers of costuming. They don't really have that. Everyone's kind of consistently wearing the same sort of thing. I don't know huge amounts of Regency costuming, especially the men's, but it's just one of these things where I didn't feel the glamour of the balls towards the end of the series, because there had been so many parties and everything everyone was wearing at the parties looked the same as what they were wearing throughout the whole thing. In terms of the glamour, other issues is that in this season, Penelope is still supposed to be quite sort of frumpy and awkward. So it makes sense for, say, characters like Eloise to have a bit of a glow up because Eloise is coming out in society now. Penelope, it didn't really make sense for me, but they still kind of looked a bit more glamorous. She was wearing, last season she had her hair up, but this season she had like bows and jewels in her hair, which didn't make sense to me. I think so. It's one of these things where with the glow up, it was much more about, clearly from a production point, it was more about making the show look better rather than look or feel authentic. I still loved the costumes. I did complain about the way the costuming worked, but I actually really loved the costumes. I don't blame the costumes designers for that. I would think that was more of a direction thing or production thing. It was an issue with last series as well, where, you know, say Daphne had loads and loads of different dresses, but a lot of them kind of just looked the same. So I still love the costumes. I still think they're great. Some of them I would really like to recreate one day. But yeah, just the glamour of the show, it add that to the some of the direction was a lot of the direction was pretty bland. I don't expect too much from direction, especially when you've got like a show like this, but it, just didn't make things look all that interesting. You get some nice music and stuff, but a lot of it is kind of bland, generic. You're kind of more invested in watching things like chemistry and character as opposed to interesting direction with these series. Some of the direction was also really, really weird. I'll come on to that, but some of it was just insane. So the kind of glamour of it kind of made the show look just really bizarre and really surreal. The show itself I found very, very melodramatic. I'm not into melodrama. Maybe that's what the show was going for with the glow up and some of the really weird directing choices. But I just found the melodrama stuff, it was kind of inconsistent at points. Because you would have some really, really melodramatic sequences where it was more dramatic than it had to be, and other sequences where something sort of important or tense was going down and it was kind of playing it off as a joke. So the glamour of it as well was just, I didn't like it and it didn't make sense. It really damaged the tone of the show. Okay, another issue I had is kind of regarding the acting. I think the performances in Bridgerton are solid. They have some really, really talented actors here. But it kind of felt like some of the characters had been rewritten. Some of them developed, so such as Eloise, I preferred her in this series than last series. Last series I had some problems with her, which I will come on to later. But this series I felt was an improvement. But there were others, like Colin was barely there, even though he was a major part of last series. Like I said, Penelope is supposed to still kind of be frumpy and awkward, but in some places she was a lot more confident than you would expect her to be. And Benedict just got warped into this weird comic relief character that didn't make sense at all. Was semi-serious last series. This series he barely had a serious scene. It felt really strange to watch. It was kind of cringe-inducing at some point. As for Penelope, like I said, she was confident in some places where it didn't make sense to me. It makes sense for her to be confident at some points because we know that she is Whistledown, so we obviously know now that she has this kind of inner world which is a lot smarter and more savage than we first thought. But you would still think that she would be herself when there are other people around. For such a Penelope still has a shell around her. She still lives in this sort of shell, but we can see inside of it, but not every character should be able to. So it was weird in certain circumstances where she would kind of be really confident, but it doesn't make sense for other characters to see that. It makes sense for the viewer to see that kind of thing because we know she's Whistledown, but it doesn't make sense for other characters to see her that way. One other thing I remembered about Bridgerton, which is from season 1, but I do want to complain about it because it has been on my mind. Okay, in season 1 there is that scene that you may remember of Eloise asking how does a woman come to be with child, and everyone's confused and upset, and it's because Eloise and Penelope don't know how children are made. But in season 1, Penelope tells a joke to Colin where they're looking at a woman and her baby, and they say that the baby doesn't look much like the woman's husband, but in fact looks like one of the footmen. So the thing is, Penelope apparently has no idea how babies are made, but if she's made this joke, she knows something's up. She knows something's going on. Be consistent, Bridgerton. Please be consistent, okay? Yeah. Oh yeah. And just in terms of that joke as well, I kind of wanted to touch on the historical inaccuracy of a woman not knowing how children are made. Again, this is more of a complaint against season 1, but as I haven't done a season 1 review, this is something that a few people have mentioned. I know Karolina Zabrowska did quite a good video talking about this kind of stuff. It's very historically inaccurate to suggest that women weren't aware what sex was and women weren't aware how children were made, when actually a lot of the time women got a much better sexual education than men did, because remember, women were the ones who had to carry the babies. So probably from when girls were getting their periods, that is when people would tell them this is how children are made and you're not supposed to do it. Because otherwise women didn't know what they had to be worried about. There are scenes in Bridgerton where, they're like, ladies cannot be alone with men unchaperoned, and you need to have someone watching at all times. But it's like it's played off as the women don't know why that is. Actually, it was very, very common for women to know these kinds of things. They even have, I think, in like some museums, you can get sex education books. Also, you would get women spoke to each other, so it would be accurate for Daphne, as soon as she came back from her honeymoon, to come home and just tell Eloise everything that had happened. Women spoke to each other, women talk about these things. So yeah, just the kind of general naivety when it comes to women and sexuality, I think is a kind of I am going to talk about issues with sexism a bit later on, but I think it is another issue of sexism in the show, of this idea that women have no idea what sex is, when actually it's completely historically inaccurate. Women actually were very well educated when it came to it. They were told not to have it, and they were told that, the importance of virginity, which is of course a, problematic and historically accurate problem. But yeah, it just wasn't accurate that, Daphne wouldn't know how children are made, and that, Eloise and Penelope wouldn't know how children were made, when they almost certainly would. And also, this would have been a very interesting route for the show to go down, I think, if you're doing a sort of sexed up Regency drama, and you are trying to talk about women's issues, which this show attempts to do, but doesn't do very well. It would be really interesting to talk about the fact that women are actually very aware of these things, but it's forbidden from them, whereas men aren't as well educated, but they still have access to it. That would be a very fascinating idea to play with, and they kind of just abandoned it and went with the inaccurate stereotype of women didn't know anything and men had to guide them, and it kind of romanticizes virgins, basically, which is an issue for me. yeah, it celebrates naivety and more than like knowledge and experience. So, but yeah, sorry, we were talking about the acting, and yeah, there are lots and lots of changes between the first season, the second season. Like I say, the glamour, other things. So I don't hold the actors accountable for the changes in characterization. I don't think it's Nicola Coughlan's fault. She's brilliant. She did an amazing job with Penelope in the series. She was absolutely believable. She felt very real. Like I say, the series felt very surreal and melodramatic, but Penelope still felt very grounded. And again, I can't remember who plays Benedict, but I still thought he acted it well. It's just, I assume, again, that was a directing choice or a production choice. I don't hold the actors accountable. They performed it well. It just felt weird to see their characters kind of just morphed. Yeah, and again, like similar to the costumes where I don't hold them accountable. Another problem, the flashbacks. Can we talk about the flashbacks ranging between hilarious and nightmare fuel? They give us some good insight to the past, and they give us some good insight to Anthony's personality, which was very much needed because I struggled with Anthony this season. Yeah, they're good insight, but they are filmed in such an insane way. They are filmed in like 2003 B movie kind of way. They're just so weird. I didn't like them. I'm sorry, but oh my god, Ruth Gemmell, you stole the show. Violet Bridgerton was the MVP of the season. Oh, I'm going to talk later about how much I love Violet Bridgerton and how Ruth Gemmell is perfection itself. But oh my god, she was brilliant. But oh my god, those flashbacks were amazing. I was laughing through all of them. They were just so stupid. Similarly to flashbacks, some of the cinematography, I said that some of the directing was bland and unoriginal. And yeah, whoever made the decision to have that weird moving camera just at random points in the series had taken whatever Benedict drank in his tea. Honestly, that there was like the camera kind of just twists from side to side. It's weird, but sometimes it does it in like romantic sequences where it's like high and tense and there's chemistry, and other times it does it at random points and I don't know why. And it was insane. So some of the cinematography I had a huge issue with. It was like distracting how bad some of it felt. Yeah, again, it was like one of these things where the shows was some of the direction was bland, and then you have this kind of weird directing choice, and it made it feel again surreal, melodramatic, which I was not into. And again, maybe that's just a personal thing. Maybe some people are into this kind of over dramatic style. I just wasn't, and I felt it was a real departure from series one, which was it was melodramatic in places, but generally felt grounded and generally felt real. Whereas this kind of took me out of it completely. Now, wait for my long spiel about the casual sexism of Bridgerton. This is honestly the main reason why I wanted to make this podcast this week. So to be honest, you can listen to the sexism stuff and then kind of ignore the rest. I will record the rest. I'll be 3 hours here recording this because I have 9 pages of notes. Again, this is just from memory. I didn't write in my notebook or anything. I just typed it up on my computer. But Bridgerton has a real issue with just casual sexism. By casual sexism, I mean sexism where it's not like the point of the show, it's not the storylines necessarily, it's just how they treat men and women in kind of general sense. The show has a lot of issues with casual sexism because it attempts performative activism. Performative activism, or like Hollywood activism, is where these sort of mainstream shows will try and take up a cause, and it kind of just falls apart. Because ultimately it doesn't care about said cause. So this show, I think, is trying to be feminist. It's trying to be like a feisty, fun, feminist show. But it doesn't, because to be honest, it doesn't feel like there's a single person on the set who really cares about feminism enough to do some real groundwork on it. It's very, very much surface level feminism, but when you kind of start digging away at the surface, you realise there's actually a lot of sexism in the show. It's not a show about empowering women on the whole. It's a show about how a couple of women are, edgy and fun, and we should praise them but not respect women in general. Most women, apart from the main characters, are completely disrespected because they don't break the mould enough, and it doesn't recognise the fact that some women do want traditional things such as marriage and children. Women who want those things are basically shamed for those things. It was a huge issue in series 1, and it's still an issue now. One of the main things, the show is not brave enough to address many of the issues women faced during the era. So, for example, you meet Marina again this season. She is that's the closest you get to these issues of she was forced to marry someone because she was pregnant and she's trapped in a sort of loveless marriage, but ultimately the show goes down the road of saying her husband is still a good man. We only see Marina very briefly. She didn't have a story arc. I think that was the correct decision, but she doesn't have a story arc. But that is the closest it comes to dealing with issues that women had to deal with. That, and I suppose you could say Prudence having to marry a man because they were caught together, but that is again something that she wants, and the man is quite nice. It's so different to situations that women actually would have been in, where they would be, stuck married to abusive men they resented, men who resented them, men who treated them badly, because they were allowed to. These were all the issues that come up. These are issues that Eloise mentions, but they're nothing more than mentioned. So that's an issue of just not dealing with issues that it brings up. The show acts like it can deal with these things, but it ultimately can't. I thought in season 1, Marina's storylines was one of the strongest lines of the series, seeing how her lack of choice because of her situation kind of turned her into a monster. She kind of turned against Penelope and tried to manipulate Colin, but the whole thing was because of the position that she was in. So I think that was a really, really strong story arc. I think she did that really well. And just considering the show is all about Regency women just aren't treated with the respect that they deserve to be. They also don't write anything about contemporary feminism which was occurring during the Regency era, which not a lot of people would associate with it. Not a lot of people remember it, even. So I understand the fact that because this is a historical fiction drama which is written in the modern day, yes, you are going to want to put modern perspectives on stuff. I think that's fine. I think that's fair enough. But I do think there is a huge issue when it comes to things like sexism, racism, homophobia, and stuff like that. Talking about these in historical dramas and not actually addressing the fact that there were things going on at the time to fight these issues. Yes, during the Regency period, everyone was very sexist, very racist, very homophobic, stuff like that. But women still have history, people of colour still have history, gay people still have history that you need to address, because a lot of historical fiction writers do is they tend to sort of just colour it in by writing women from the past. I think I remember last season, Eloise talks about how she wants to go to university, and she's that's kind of the way they write it of, oh, if only I could go to the university, if only I could do that, rather than maybe actually looking into some of the stuff that was going on at the time that women were involved in. For example, during the Regency era, there was the women's abolitionist movement who actually were very successful in campaigning to have slavery abolished in the United Kingdom and then later in the United States. So they were some of the most influential writers of the Regency period, not just the most influential female writers, but Jane Austen is a writer that we still read today. Mary Shelley invented science fiction, during this period. I don't think the show is, I think the show is still in 1815, 1816, so it's a couple of years before Mary Shelley published, but still there were very important female writers at the time. The women had an animal rights movement and animal rights campaigns, which were really successful, which kind of got women into politics. You had dowagers running their own estates. You had women taking up businesses. You had women who were social climbers, who were very intelligent and, managed to work their way up in the world. Women who were married to parliamentarians and would actually have to behave in certain ways and host certain events in order to help their husband's parliamentary career. Yes, women were stuck behind men, but they still existed back then. And what a lot of historical dramas tend to do is sort of focus on the fact that women didn't have as much agency and were expected to be passive. They never ever talk about the women who weren't passive, who actually did things. Yes, it doesn't compare to nowadays when women can get divorced, go to universities, own property and everything. Yeah, we have way more rights nowadays, and so it's maybe celebrating the fact that you help to prop up your husband's political career isn't necessarily the most modern version of feminism, but it's still the history of feminism and it's still important, and I kind of wish these shows would embrace it a bit more rather than completely avoiding it and, and basically colouring in women's history. There are so many issues. Jokes about corsets, which, by the way, just so you know, corsets were actually very comfortable. Many women liked to wear them. It was often men that complained about corsets because they liked to complain about women's fashion. Every time there was a complaint about a corset in the newspaper, thousands of women would write in and be like, actually, we're the ones that wear corsets, we like them. Some periods in history, men actually wore corsets and liked them as well, but they kind of just stopped wearing them. So whenever you hear a corset joke, it is a joke that is rooted in sexism. People will act like corset jokes are to celebrate the fact that women got away from this, evil contraption. Women were wearing corsets for like 400 years before bras were invented. There was a reason for it. It's because corsets are fine. There are some problems which, do your own research in terms of corsets. Yes, there are problems linked to them. And just in general, there are unfortunately body discrimination, body negativity issues. That's ranged throughout history. That's not corsets, that's just human history. So things like corset jokes, again, very historically inaccurate and, a way of colouring in women's history. In terms of sexism, I thought Penelope and Madame Delacroix do a good job of showing what the world is like for women who have jobs. They do a good working woman thing. They're both respectable, they're both intelligent. I think they kind of stand up, but it does not even begin to make up for the sexism we see in the show. So far I've only talked about the sexism of things that we don't see, so we don't see actual women's history and stuff. I am going to get onto the stuff that we do see that is more direct. But one thing we also don't see is the fact that Hyacinth, at her age, probably has a governess that we never ever meet. I just thought that was a bit weird. I think it's because Jane Eyre is my favourite book and it's about governess. I kind of like that. Again, that could be like a character that they brought in. Governesses were also an interesting bridge between the family and the servants, because they weren't part of the family, but they weren't really servants. So again, that would be in like an interesting position to put a woman in. That would be an interesting position to look at a woman, and they don't really have that, just because again the show is more, like the same with the Glamour, where the show it's more important to look glamorous than to be authentic. The show cares more about looking feminist than actually being feminist, and we can see that with the way that they treat the woman. First of all, this is it's my 15th point when it comes to feminism, but I'm still talking. Mamas. There is, in last season and this season, there is an ongoing joke about mothers pushing their children to marrying. It never addresses the fact that mothers are, women who have married and had children. And mothers are possibly very cynical because they understand the way the world works. Say Portia Featherington, she understands that her family is in reduced circumstances and her daughter's best chance in life, they're not going to inherit anything. Their best chance in life is to marry well. So there are all these jokes about how, mothers forcing their daughters to get married and trying to manipulate situations so their daughters get married. But they never address the fact that actually mothers are perhaps cynical, maybe a bit jaded, knowing that their daughters may not have any other hope. It's, again, this isn't like the most feminist stance to take on this thing, the idea that, yeah, women should get married to secure their futures, but it would be a more interesting reflection on mothers who are just sort of grounded. They're not as they're not naive, you know, they're not as hopeful. Yeah, it's great to have characters who, like Eloise, who are hopeful and want more for them, you know, want something else and they want options and everything. But the mothers, I think, represent more a traditional sense of women who know what it's like for a woman in the world and are worried about their daughters growing up to be spinsters. It's a really terrible ongoing joke to have when the series is also trying to make a point of saying women have so few options in the world. Women don't have few options because their mothers are pushing them to marry. Mothers are pushing them to marry because they have few options. And also at the same time, this is a weird joke to have because Kate is trying to marry her sister off to avoid poverty and is shown to be a really caring sister because of that. Yes, she makes mistakes, but she wants Edwina to marry well so that she can have a good life. And we praise Kate for that. But meanwhile, the sort of mothers continue to be the butt of the joke. The mothers also don't really get much individual personality. They're all shown to be very much the same, which again is just sexism, I personally feel. On the similar vein, the debutantes. So at the beginning, it's kind of played off as a joke once again when Anthony goes through a series of ladies, and he's got a list of ladies that he's potentially going to court. He says he's going to be interviewing them or interrogating them. And he basically keeps crossing them all off the list because they're not perfect. This helps to set Edwina and Kate apart, as, you know, all these other ladies are not perfect and they're stupid and they're not attractive, whereas Edwina are like perfection and, well, you know, even though they're flawed characters, they suit them, they're more intelligent, they're just better. So he goes through this series of ladies to kind of show how they are lesser and how Edwina and Kate are superior. It's a very common trope to, you know, establish a character by contrasting them against another character. But all of these just young ladies are treated with no respect, even though some of them you assume must be somewhat intelligent. Some of them are crafters. There's one woman who makes her own hats, which is awesome. That's an awesome hobby. If anyone makes their own hats, please let me know. That is cool. There are other women who play many musical instruments, who speak different languages. Some of them are just nervous and shy and struggling. You know, it's just really sad to see the way they're treated with no respect, never address the pressure they are under to marry, even though, again, it does address the fact that Kate feels under pressure to help Edwina marry. And also, Anthony never feels any remorse for the way he treats them, for the way he kind of shoves them aside so casually. It would be an impressive story arc if he kind of realised how sexist that was, but he never does. It kind of just serves to make Edwina and Kate look good. Kate does chastise him for the way he treats women, but this is a moment of sexual tension and not a moment for the character to reflect. This is a problem throughout the show, the fact that any time it tries to do something serious, it revolves more around the characters and sexual tension, or just general character tension, as opposed to the point of what they're saying. Kate says, I don't approve of men who see women as, you know, breeding stock and everything, which is a good point to have, but the main focus of the scene is clearly getting Anthony and Kate to start bickering and stop liking each other. So there was maybe an attempt to chastise Anthony for his treatment of women, but I don't think it was very effectively called out. At the same time, Eloise kind of consistently dismisses suitors, but there is one point where she does dance with a suitor and she dismisses him because they have genuine personality conflicts, and it's a whole scene, as opposed to Anthony going through this montage where the debutantes can only say a few lines at a time and don't really get much personality between them. Eloise has an issue with the guy, but it's because of genuine conflict. Also, most of the men are kind of fall into dude bro stereotypes, but they're not the butt of the jokes the same way the debutantes seem to be. I wouldn't say the men get more distinction. They are still extras, they are still side characters, and not to say that all of the debutantes have to be side characters, have to be recognised, have to have personalities, but it's just the fact that they are the butt of a joke when actually it's quite depressing. And again, it could be used to make a good point about the fact that women did not have many options at the time, and just because you're not Eloise, this sort of raging feminist who wants to break the mould, it doesn't mean you should be punished for it, which the show seems to think they should be, even though it's not their fault. It's kind of blaming women for sexism, basically. It's the issue with the mamas, it's the issue with the debutantes. And this is where we get the I'm not like other girls issues. I'm not like other girls is a very, very common trope to have. Actually, to be honest, the trope should really be called you're not like other girls, because more often than not, it is actually a man who says, you're not like other girls. The issue with this trope is that it is often used to make a main character feel like a main character. It makes them feel original, unique and everything. Often it is kind of to make them look relatable as well. It's weird but to say you're not like other girls, often it's just one of these things where every girl watches it and thinks, I'm not like other girls, so I'm like this main character. It helps the main characters to relate, but it also helps to set them aside from the rest of society. The issue with that is that the idea of not being like other girls being a compliment suggests that it is a bad thing to be like other girls, that being feminine is an issue, that if you are feminine it just means you've fallen back onto a stereotype, as opposed to some people who genuinely are feminine. I myself do a lot of sort of knitting and sewing. That's a very feminine hobby. I have friends who love baking, a very feminine hobby. So yeah, in some respects I'm just like other girls. I'm very stereotypically like other girls. I like dresses, I like cardigans. I'm not that different from other girls, but it's not something that I should be ashamed about. I enjoy my hobbies, I like my dresses, and the not like other girls trope is a very, very problematic trope at the moment, which a lot of people don't seem to understand, is the fact that, yeah, you can be very girly, very feminine, you can be like other girls and still be a good thing. Bridgerton, however, seems to think that, because Kate and Edwina aren't like the other girls, they're superior, they're better, and the other girls should sort of be ashamed of being like other girls. Most of the main female characters we see sort of setting themselves apart by doing masculine stuff. So Eloise is getting into politics, Kate goes out shooting, which is very with all the men. However, none of the men ever do feminine things that are considered feminine, so like sewing or reading romances or baking. All of the men are very, very masculine, so it's very much a one-way street in terms of gender expectations. Women sort of going towards masculine activities, but men do not go towards feminine activities. You could argue Benedict with his art might be considered a more feminine activity by some people, but at the Royal Art School it is a school for just men, so that doesn't really work in Bridgerton. The not like other girls trope is very, very existent here. I think Eloise is probably the worst offender for it. She is the epitome of I'm not like other girls, and the suggestion is I am superior to other girls. It's a very, very sexist trope because, like I say, it suggests that femininity is weak or bad, and it's just a huge issue with Bridgerton. Some other issues I have with it, we talk about how difficult things were for Anthony when his father died. They don't really touch on how things were difficult for Violet when she lost her husband and raised 8 children by herself. I do understand that this show is meant to be about Anthony this season especially, but it's just one of these things where it kind of made Violet look like a weak shell of herself, when we do know at some point she came out of that and had to continue without her husband and raise the children. So yes, Anthony made loads of sacrifices, but it makes a far bigger deal of Anthony's sacrifices and struggles than it does about Violet's sacrifices and struggles, which still would have been pretty immense even if they weren't as big as Anthony's. That was an issue for me, that Anthony was so kind of celebrated for some stuff, and when there are other characters going through similar things which weren't drawn attention to. This same issue, I had a huge issue with this, which was Penelope's father. Penelope's father has just died. His murder case is unsolved. We don't know what happened to him. Penelope wasn't necessarily close, but you never ever see the Featheringtons mourn at all. Again, they're not like the main characters, but still, they just lost their father, their lives have been turned upside down, the murder has not been solved, and doesn't bring it up once. At the same time, there's it's the entire series about Anthony having daddy issues because of his father died, I think like 20 odd years ago. It'd be 10 years ago. Yes. however old Hyacinth is, that long ago. Not to say that these things wouldn't still affect Anthony, and yes, Anthony was closer to his father, so he will feel it differently, but still, the Featheringtons just lost someone in their family, and they are barely given space to mourn in the series. They're not given like a single serious moment. It felt very, very cheap. Just the whole issue with the sexism is that the show thinks it is empowering. It's not. It actually is a real dampener on women. That's just an issue for me that I couldn't really get around and became very obvious as I watched the show. So I would be hesitant if you guys are watching the show thinking it's empowering to women, and then just have a look at the way it treats all of the women in the show and the way it treats femininity. I also wanted to... touch upon is a bad term to use. I wanted to just say with regards to the sex scenes, there were a lot fewer sex scenes here. That didn't bother me. The issues I had with it is that, first of all, it was very obvious that they were struggling to pad the runtime without all the sex scenes. I think part of Benedict's story arc only existed so they had a sex scene somewhere. I don't know why they decided to not do as many. Maybe it didn't fit for plot purposes, but yeah, it was just very evident that there weren't as many. And the one thing that confused me though is that it was advertised as being even steamier than the first season when it wasn't, so I don't know who was in charge of advertising. One of the adverts was also really, really bad. Just one of them was just terrible. There was one advert which was really funny because it was really melodramatic. I see now it wasn't meant to be funny, it was meant to be melodramatic, but like it was hilarious. I was cackling. But one of the other adverts was just terrible. And yeah, it was just advertised as like, really steamy. It was going to be even more sexed up and even more tense. And it just wasn't. So I just think there was an issue with the advertising. Okay, I'll admit, I think this is the end of my overall issues segment. I'm already at 40 minutes, guys. I haven't even gotten into, diagnosing the show. I have a bit. But I will admit with my overall issues thing, a lot of them, I paid a lot of attention to the trailers, to the releases, to the photos and everything. I paid a lot of attention to those. So of course I had my own theories and predictions and hopes, such as one of the things I hoped was that Penelope's father dying would matter. It kind of didn't. I mean, yeah, they do have a new lord and everything, but the actual death doesn't really mean or do anything. It's not like there's a murder investigation or something. It's not like anyone's grieving. It's not like, I do wonder if the grief did fuel some of Penelope's actions in the series, but that was never really canonised. I personally think they did because that would kind of make sense, but the show is not one for making sense. I have read the book, The Viscount Who Loved Me. I thought that it would follow the book. It doesn't. Spoiler alert. I went in with my own predictions. Some of them did not come true, so that of course would have hindered my opinion of the series, but other things I stand by, such as the casual sexism of the show, I stand by as that being a really huge issue in the show, which I am hoping they address one day, but considering I know that no one is actually going to listen to this podcast, I very much doubt they will, especially because some people do treat characters such as Eloise as very empowering characters, when actually when you look at them, she almost constantly puts other women down. In the first series, she spent most of that series putting Daphne down because Daphne had chosen the casual way of life. Hot take, I prefer Eloise in the books than in the series. In the books, Eloise is still this sort of fiery personality who wants to be a spinster, doesn't want to be the traditional path, wants to carve her own path, but at least she's respectful of other people's decisions. She understands that Daphne wants to marry and allows it. She knows that Penelope is in love with Colin and she is happy for them. I would much rather watch, maybe the book is a bit more boring. I'll admit that. The book is a bit more boring. But Eloise in the book, at least, I would rather watch a boring, sympathetic character than a lively, unempathetic character. A lively character who kind of just spends their entire time snarking at other people. Okay, I'm going to try and do a little segment on things I like, and then I am going to go through and basically go plot line by plot line, or what constitutes a plot line in this mess of a series. So the things that I did like, some Like I said, some amazing performances, acting, some incredible acting. Nicola Coughlan stand out for me. There are loads and loads of other people who were brilliant. I love the costumes. Costumes looked beautiful. A lot of the set design I thought looked really beautiful as well. Like I said, it was too glamorous, it was too vibrant, but I can't avoid the fact that actually the set designers did really, really well. It looked gorgeous. It was just a bit too much for me. But yeah, it looked amazing. Things I liked in general. Kate and Edwina, sister goals. Oh my god, they were adorable. Every moment they had together, even when they were arguing, every moment they were together, I could feel it in my heart that these were sisters and they loved each other, and they were amazing. They were great additions to the series. This series would not have survived without them. Shout out to, I don't know what we're calling the kind of older generation of Lady Danbury, Violet Bridgerton, Mary Sharma and Portia Featherington. They stole the show. Violet Bridgerton is the captain of the Stealing the Show squad. The squad consisting of Lady Featherington, Lady Danbury and Lady Sharma. Violet Bridgerton stole the show. Everyone, all the other ladies were behind her. Props to them. The Queen was good at some points. I'll talk a bit more about her later, but I thought she was good at some points. But the other four ladies, oh my god, well done, ladies, well done. Newton was such a good boy. Oh, Newton was the highlight of the series. Newton is the mascot of the Stealing the Show squad. I loved Newton. Although on that note, where is Penelope's dog? I don't know if Penelope's dog does have a name, but where is Penelope's dog? I'm a bit worried about him. What time is it? Oh, I've got to get going with this. Yeah, and another thing I'd say, I love Penelope Featherington. She's probably my favourite character. Her portrayal changed, but I still love her. I still love Nicola Coughlan in the role. I think I'm mispronouncing that. I'm really sorry if I am. Her scenes at the end of the series honestly made up for everything that I didn't like about most of the series. I love Penelope. I'm so looking forward to seeing her next series. I didn't hate this series. I have issues with this series. I'll still be here for series 3. I'll be here for series 10. I'll still be here. So I'm just going to go through kind of character by character and plotline by plotline and kind of tell you my thoughts, because this is a review and this is what I'm going to be doing with my afternoon. So, start off with Kate, our sort of new addition. I couldn't say whether or not I preferred the book Kate or series Kate. I think they're kind of the same. I think they did a good job of bringing the book character to life. I'm not huge on the books, they're not great, but I do think Kate was a good sort of fun character. Simone Ashley was brilliant in the role. Simone Ashley honestly is too beautiful to be human. I don't think she is human. She is so gorgeous, she is so talented, she was amazing. I don't have much to say about Kate other than I really, really liked her. She's a really good flawed character. She works well as a main character. She keeps secrets, she keeps people at arm's length, but she's very caring, she's very protective. She struggles to admit if she doesn't know what to do, which I can relate to a fair bit. You see a fair bit of depth with her, but you kind of see all of her depth kind of unravel as the series goes on. Her mistakes come back to haunt her. She gets her comeuppance at certain points, which is really good in a character, but she kind of has to work through it. She just has a really good narrative arc, I felt. I thought the references to Indian culture, I think it's Tamil culture, are good. Again, I don't know if I'm mispronouncing it. I don't know if I'm talking about the wrong culture altogether. I apologise. I am not the authority on this. I'm no authority when it comes to the portrayal of race in dramas, but I did think that it was a much better introduction of multiculturality this season than it was last season. Last season suggested that racism had finished like a couple of decades ago and that they just weren't racist anymore. It was a really, really weird scene. They probably could have cut the scene out completely. I don't think many people were happy with it because of the fact that it kind of brought in racism once and then didn't bring it in again at all, even though this is a series with many, many acts of colour. There were lots of references to the Sharmas' sort of home culture. They were consistent. They weren't like a theme in the show, I wouldn't say. They weren't something that was discussed or talked about, but it was kind of just to show that casually how they lived their life. I think it kind of matched with the tone, with show's actual tone rather than the tone it's going for. It's going for a really dramatic tone. It's actually a lot more, the show is actually a lot more relaxed than it would like to admit, I feel. And so these kind of subtle references to a different culture and different ideas and everything, I think worked a lot better. And yeah, the subtlety kind of matches it being a fluffy romance. So I think that was really well done, and that was centred around the Sharmas. Yeah, I thought with Kate, the whole issue with the Sheffields wanting to give Edwina a dowry and completely ignoring Kate, I think that was a pretty nice addition. Again, it kind of shows you that Kate does what she can to protect her family, but she doesn't always do the right thing. It gave all the characters more backstory. I really loved how Mary stepped in to protect Kate. And you can see, she talks about how she has two daughters. They are both her daughters, even though she is Kate's stepmother. Yeah, it showed Kate's attempts to protect her sister doing more harm than good. It sort of created quite a natural rift between the sisters, but they forgave each other. Yeah, I just really liked Kate. I really liked her story. I liked her narrative arc. I wasn't keen on the story in general, but most of what Kate did kind of made sense for her character. The fact that Kate is such a good character, I think, is evidence that the series wasn't lacking just because Regé-Jean Page wasn't in it. So Regé-Jean, who played Simon Bassett, he was main character in the first series, did not appear in this series. A lot of people are saying that this series wasn't as good because he wasn't in it. I disagree. They kind of replaced him with Kate, who was a really, really great character. Unfortunately, one really great character can't fix the entire series. She brought everything she could. She brought everything she could to the series. She brought everything that Simon had brought to the series. This season failed for its own reasons. One thing I would say, basically in the books, this series, again, the second season dropped a lot of stuff that was in the books. It just ignored it completely. I'm a person who has a lot of anxiety. I have a lot of phobias. That's my personal thing. So I would have really liked if they'd kept something that is in the book, which is the fact that Kate has a fear of storms. They send her into panic attacks. It is one of the few times where she loses control. I'd have liked that if they kept that in the series. It felt really, really cheap where this moment in the book, which is where Kate lets her guard down and starts panicking, and Anthony has to comfort her. Admittedly, this moment in the book, basically there's a storm going on, and as I say, Kate begins panicking. Anthony comforts her. Yes, it is a bit of a hero complex moment, I get that, but I do think it was cheap to kind of replace that with another finger brush near kiss scene. In the book, it kind of gave them, that scene kind of gave them natural development of Kate having this weakness, had this anxiety. In the series, they kind of just ditched it completely. I think a lot of fans of the book weren't completely happy about that. I would just have liked to, I think her having this fear and this anxiety would have really, not that the character needed help, but I think it would have been good for the character. I would have liked to have seen it. It would have been a good way of kind of lightly touching on the idea of mental health problems without getting too serious about it. I think you can do that in shows like this. I think you can lightly touch these ideas without going too deep into them, just by having this character with this problem. They didn't go that route. I think that was a mistake. I think they should have. But overall, Kate was really well written and really well played, and she brought us Newton, who is a good boy. He's such a good boy. So alongside Kate, we also have Edwina. Edwina and Kate's bond is the core of the show. It was the best thing about this series. It was amazing to watch. They have amazing chemistry. I really want these two to keep playing sisters in better shows. I want to see both of these actors in better shows together. They were amazing together. Edwina is genuinely sweet and lovely. I can't remember the actor's name, but she plays the pressure of heartbreak. And she plays pressure really well. She plays heartbreak really well while still maintaining this kind of young, naive persona. She's just really well written. Her reactions feel real and genuine and well written, especially when it comes to the Sheffield affair. It gives Kate real consequences for her actions because, you know, their relationship, which is so important, is kind of threatened. So it gives the show actual stakes, which honestly, one of the issues with the show is that the stakes are never very high to begin with. But the fact that this sisterly bond is on the line, that gives the show weight. But I will say I did not care at all for the love triangle. They said that they wanted to go for a love triangle thing. I think this was the wrong decision. Especially because the entire show was advertised as Anthony and Kate's love story, so you knew who they were going to pick, you knew who they were going to end up with. It would have been much more interesting to just see Kate and Anthony's interactions rather than throw them into a love triangle narrative. But I do appreciate that during the love triangle narrative, the most important thing was Kate and Edwina's bond as sisters. That is what Kate kept putting first, so she basically rejected Anthony's because she wanted to keep putting Kate first, because she wanted to put Edwina first. Edwina didn't marry Anthony because it would cause conflict with her sister. The sisterly bond, I appreciate, was the most important facet of the love triangle storyline. I just don't think they should have gone with that storyline. Also, there are some conversations which some people don't like Edwina because they view her as getting in between Kate and Anthony. I view her as she didn't know what was going on, and she was kind of left heartbroken, which wasn't her fault. There are a couple conversations that she and Kate have where she kind of seems angry at Kate and don't really make sense. There is one bit where Edwina's talking about happily ever afters and how there are no happily ever afters, and it's just one of these things where it felt so angsty. It didn't feel like a real conversation. I think at this point they were trying to pad the runtime, so they were having these really repetitive arguments of Edwina just generally being annoyed with Kate. That didn't reflect well on the characters, but I think that was more a direction issue of them just trying to fill the runtime. Really, the episode should have only been about 45 minutes long. Some of them were over an hour. That was a mistake. But they didn't change my opinion of Edwina. I still like her as a character. She does fall for a guy who hates her sister, which I just feel like is bad girl code. I know that she has the pressure to marry well, but still she could do better than Anthony, honestly. Honestly, the fuss over Anthony, I don't get it at all. Don't fall in love with people who either hate your sister or are in love with your sister. Don't do that. I think they could have accomplished a very similar arc and very similar emotional impact without, the whole love triangle thing. Or you could have had Edwina just felt a sense of duty to marry well and still kind of felt betrayed that she got engaged to a guy who was in love with Kate. You didn't have to have Edwina in love with Anthony, which again in the books Edwina wasn't in love with Anthony. It's actually really sweet in the books where Anthony tries really hard to get to Edwina. Kate keeps blocking him, and when he and Edwina finally hang out, they just realise that they're just wrong for each other. They don't have any kind of connection at all. That was a really funny moment in the book. It was really satisfying to be like, they're not right for each other. And they robbed us of that, which was a shame. Oh my god, we're at the first hour. I am barely through this. I'm like halfway through this. I'm so sorry. Okay, moving on. Mary, they introduced the character of Mary. Again, not much to say about her. She doesn't have a storyline, but she's likeable. Again, she has flaws like such as the fact that she let Kate take on too much responsibility, but she feels remorse for this and kind of faces the consequences for this. Her bond with her daughters and her actions in general, they make the show much more grounded and natural. This show is so surreal that it really needed that. And Mary is part of the Violet Bridgerton stealing the show squad. I liked Mary. She was fine. She was a good addition. She made the show feel grounded. She was good. Anthony. Let's talk about Anthony Bridgerton now. If I took a shot every time I thought, for fuck's sake, Anthony, I would not have a liver. I would be getting my stomach pumped. Anthony just does not compare well to Kate because he just seems to think about himself more than, and his fears more than, and his title more than other people in his family. Kate is mostly motivated by protecting her family throughout the series. Anthony, we do see that he has sacrificed for his family in the past, but his actions in the series make him... it's one of these things where they tell it more than they show it. He doesn't make many decisions in the show which kind of show him putting his family before his own wants. It's one of these things where they talk about how much he put his family first. They don't really show it that much, in my opinion. Kate is motivated by protecting her family. Anthony is motivated by an unquenchable desire to have everyone in the world hate him. I find Anthony a cliche character anyway, which probably didn't help me take to him. He's not an awful character. I don't dislike him. But, apart from the fact that he has daddy issues and he's charming, there isn't really a lot to like about him. He is the cause of most of the issues in the series, and unlike Kate, I don't really understand why. He had to take on responsibilities at a young age, and he was obviously scarred at a young age, which is fair enough, which kind of suggests some of them, his motivations, but others, it just felt random. He also refers to Kate as a thorn, so screw him. He does admit how screwed up he is and that he feels bad. It's just one of these things where I think he's a character where what they say about the character and who the character actually is are very, very different. We get a glimpse of goodness at the end with him, I think in the final episode. So there's the point where he realises where Kate's okay, and we find he just had been really distressed about that, and he's just so relieved. I think that is a genuinely very good scene. Again, I know Jonathan Bailey was very, very good, but Ruth Gemmell stole that scene. She was brilliant. Jonathan Bailey did really, really well in this role. He was really, really good. I would never deny him that. I just found the character a bit too cliche. He brought so much charisma to the character, but I just don't think Anthony worked for me. Another time where we get like a kind of glimpse of goodness from Anthony is when he basically tells Benedict that he got him into the art school because he believes in him, because he has faith in him, because he wants him to pursue art. So you get these moments of kindness, but Anthony is our main character, so it feels really, really weird where you only get these moments of kindness as opposed to more of an arc with him. Anthony's arc is kind of just screwing up. And again, it kind of gives you a reason why, but I couldn't sympathise that much with him. So Anthony and Kate, their kind of love story, their chemistry was so good, it almost set my laptop on fire. Their chemistry was amazing, but that doesn't make up for how long and repetitive and nonsensical the storyline was. Same issues with Daphne and Simon in season 1. These two characters spend most of the series have the same arguments over and over again. They have a lot of petty arguments, which at the beginning is fine, but towards the end I was bored of. There are also like 4 near kiss scenes. I get that near kiss scenes are hot, they're great for chemistry, but there are like 4 or 5 of them. There were too many, again, padding the runtime. There were a couple in there which did not make an impact at all. The first couple were fine, and then afterwards it's kind of like, okay, we're doing this again. So I thought the beginning of their relationship was fine. I still liked both their characters at the beginning of the relationship. I think this is where Anthony's main flaw comes in, is the fact that he proposed to Edwina. First of all, it takes off from the novel. It doesn't agree with the novel. And second of all, it's not a decision that makes sense to me at all. I understand him not pursuing Kate because he's afraid of getting his heart broken. However, him deciding to propose to Edwina is one of the most ridiculous decisions he's ever made. It also makes sense for Kate to tell Anthony not to leave Edwina, to go through with the marriage, because Kate obviously wants Edwina to be happy with the man that she loves, and Kate is willing to put Edwina before his own feelings. It doesn't make any sense to me why Anthony continued with the engagement knowing he was in love with Kate. He knew that he was going to break Edwina's heart. He knew that it was going to end badly. He knew he was always going to want Kate. And it doesn't make sense for him to go through with it. It makes sense for Kate to ask him to break off the engagement. It doesn't make sense for Anthony to agree with her and to try and go through with the wedding. It was nonsensical, and I really lost a lot of sympathy with Anthony for trying to go through the wedding. I didn't like the wedding episode anyway. Again, that's probably one of these things that turned me off Anthony Anthony. If you like Anthony, that's fair enough. I can kind of see it, but he just didn't work for me. I think they also still could have done a good thing of Anthony asking Edwina to break off the engagement, and Edwina later learning that is because he's in love with Kate, and so you didn't have to have the melodrama of the wedding. The wedding episode was, I think, the slowest and the worst of all the episodes, because we knew what was going to happen. We knew that Edwina and Anthony were not going to get married, so that kind of episode felt pointless. So I think you could have just had Anthony break off the engagement because he felt it was right. You could have Kate be mad at him for it, but then ultimately understand. You could add Edwina be mad at Kate for it, but then ultimately understand. You can do a lot of character building with stuff. But yeah, the fact that Anthony continued with the engagement didn't make sense to me. It was a huge issue for me. It made me dislike him as a character at certain points. Yeah. And the wedding was just... I sat through that episode. Oh god, I did so much crochet during that episode. I was not paying attention to the screen at all. Ultimately the love triangle did not interest me, and I think it was the wrong route to go down because it was predictable, and everything was then just solved with a brush with death. Kate gets into an accident, and that kind of solves everything, because everyone's like, oh, but she might die, so we all forgive her now, which is a common trope to use, but it's just cheap. It's cheap and lazy. Oh, what have I written in my notes? Sorry, I'm just going to take a moment to yourself. Take a moment to have a snack. Just let me read my notes for a few minutes. Oh yeah. Okay, so it comes out after the wedding that Kate and Anthony have feelings for each other, and no one really brings this up except in jokes. Like, there's a moment where, like, Edwina says, how have I been so blind, when he sees them together, and no one kind of like, so is Anthony marrying Kate now or something? You would think Violet at least would be like, so Anthony, I know that you broke this girl's heart, but you are in love with this other girl and she is in love with you, so like, is that going anywhere? Is that gonna happen? Because obviously Kate wouldn't do it because of Edwina, but no one brings it up, which I think is weird. You could have a good moment of, Anthony being like, the reason that it didn't work out was for the best because I love you. You could still have Kate saying, sorry, she's my sister, I have to put her before everything else. But they didn't do that. They didn't bring up at all, which I just thought was weird. I didn't think it made sense. So much of this story arc did not make sense. I do appreciate one of the reasons that I didn't like the love triangle story arc is because it got between Kate and Edwina's sisterhood. It was that strong that I didn't want anything to get between them. It felt the impact when it got between them. Like I said, their sisterhood is the centre, the core of the story, even the story arc. I appreciate that, but everything was so melodramatic. Just the wedding at Buckingham Palace and the dress and the everything. It was just too melodramatic for me. I wasn't into it. There were good aspects that, like I said, I think the chemistry was really good. I think some of the moments between Kate and Anthony were really good. Their arguing at the beginning I thought was fun, and the fact that Kate continually puts Edwina first and Kate makes mistakes which hurt Edwina because she's trying to protect her. I think some of it worked, just other bits did not work at all, did not make sense, so that's my summary of the main story arc, my chaotic summary. Do you think I liked it? No. See if you can guess, because I don't think anything I said made sense. Okay, so we've done Anthony. Next sibling, Benedict. Normally I do like Benedict. I quite like that he's relaxed and everything. But this season he was just comic relief. I really think Benedict kind of does work as a straight, what you see is what you get, relaxed character. They can be the most boring characters in the series, but I think Benedict's fine like that because you do need the straight man there. But yeah, watching him this season was just cringy. The episode where he was high was just really, really weird. I genuinely was hoping that after, because Colin, who has taken said drugs before, gives him like a tiny dose, and then Benedict just decides to like down the whole thing. I honestly was hoping that was going to end up with Benedict at the dinner like frothing at the mouth and like bleeding out of his eyes and stuff like that. Just like overdose. But yeah, that whole storyline, it felt pointless and like time padding once again. The series was so slow. it just wasn't particularly funny. It could have been really funny. I didn't find it particularly funny. I know that loads of people have screen grabbed the meme of him at the table sort of blushing. But yeah, it wasn't funny. I thought they could have gone a drug addiction storyline with him. I thought they could have had a really powerful, because again, that's not something that you would associate with the Regency era, but it was something that would have happened, because they had drugs back then, so drug addiction would have been a thing, but there would not have been any rehabilitation services or anything. So you could have gone the drug addiction route and had to go through that, of him facing the pressures of being an artist and sort of discontentment and everything. And they didn't go down that. It was kind of just a cheap joke. And yeah, just the overdosing joke. Again, it's some of these jokes where, like with the mamas, the debutantes, so many of these things are jokes, and I think actually shows you how the show is so much more. It's not just that some things are poor, it's that some things are harmful and reckless. So the drug addiction storyline didn't work. He hooks up with a model at some point. It felt really random. I think I mentioned before, I think this was just so that they could have a sex scene somewhere, because that's what Bridgerton's known for, so they couldn't go several episodes without a sex scene. The model I thought was quite a good character. Chemistry was all right, but it's just weird. So, especially because he has just broken up with Madame Delacroix, and potentially next season is the season where he ends up with his wife, or whoever he ends up with, because they might be changing the books, I've been given to understand. So it just feels weird to have like this weird 2-episode love story arc here, when he's just had his ex-girlfriend and he's about to get a new girlfriend. I don't know why they decided to do this, apart from the fact that they had to add a sex scene and they need Benedict to be doing something. Benedict's strongest moment in the series, Benedict only really had a couple of strong moments in the series, but his strongest moment was definitely when he found out he didn't earn his way into the academy, when he found out his brother basically paid for him to go to the academy. However, the issue with this is that the story arc isn't developed enough. The story arc isn't about him struggling to be an artist and struggling to learn and keep up and kind of learning his talent and potential. It's about him hooking up with one of the models. And they're not even like in love or anything, so it's just a kind of sex story arc basically. So it could have gone the direction of him trying and struggling with his art, and seeking validation, and then kind of not getting it, because when he realises that his art wasn't good enough to get him into the academy to begin with, that could have been a really powerful story arc of someone working with their craft and struggling with it. They didn't do that. Could have gone him the direction of him vouching for women to be let into the art school, having a male feminist back in the Regency era. I think could have been really good. They didn't go in that direction. They kind of just went for the hooking up direction. So the issue was that when he finds out he didn't actually earn his way into the academy, it's a good moment, but it has absolutely zero weight, because we don't see him struggling with his artwork that much. He's kind of sketching all the time, but he doesn't struggle with it. It's not investing in it. So it is kind of fair enough that the guy says, we thought you would be more into drinking than painting, because the whole season he has been more into partying than painting. He has been, there was a whole episode about him getting high. It kind of like, I think actually he's more into drugs than drawing. So that's a fair criticism. The main criticism of the Benedict character is that sorry, I can hear people. The main criticism of the Benedict character is that in season 1 it was very hinted that Benedict would have a LGBTQ storyline. Either he would be bi or pansexual, or something like that. There were basically hints of it. It was a theme that was introduced to the character. But they could go with this storyline and still have his book basically be the same, but I feel like this season is kind of diverting from the books a bit. They decided not to go LGBTQ at all, and did like a really stupid, cheap comic storyline, which tried to be serious at the end but didn't really work because the storyline didn't have any weight. So the whole thing was just a letdown. Fair enough if they want to tease something and maybe not pursue it or go down a different route or kind of do a twist with us and basically go somewhere they wouldn't expect. And I would have been fine if the storyline had been about his art, but it wasn't. It was kind of just he goes to this school and hooks up with a model who, again, was a kind of an interesting character to introduce, and they don't really do anything with her. It could have gone in loads and loads of directions. It didn't go in any direction. An LGBTQ storyline in this series would have been incredible, and they decided not to go with it, even though I think lots of people were really into the idea. It's 2022, there was not a single LGBTQ character in this entire series. Again, like I said, it kind of just colours in LGBTQ history because, of course, these people would have existed back then. And yeah, I think the whole thing was a letdown. It was quite disappointing, and I'm guessing they didn't really know what they were doing. They kind of half-assed it. I didn't like it. It's really, really weird if that Benedict was a semi-serious character last season with like themes and struggles and everything, and this season is comic relief, and potentially next season he will be the lead. That's a really, really uneven tone to give a character. Anthony was like a very serious character last season because thanks to his love story. But this season, Benedict was just comic relief and could potentially have a really difficult love story next season. So that's just a really, really awkward tone they're trying to pursue. I mean, this show isn't very good with tone anyway. But yeah, that was a problem for me. I do have a theory that they don't know what they're going to do next season. At the end of season 1, they did tease that season 2 would be Anthony's story. This season didn't really have a tease at the end so much, or like a cliffhanger or anything. I genuinely believe this season is a trial run for the showrunners who want to abandon the books and basically write their own thing. I think the mixed reactions that this season has got could lead to a return to the book, so we could be seeing Benedict's storyline next season, which will be really, really weird, like I said, because he was comic relief this season and is going to try and be serious next season. I do think Benedict and Eloise remain a good sibling duo because it's kind of one of the few instances where we see siblings actually caring about each other. Most of the siblings don't interact that much and don't seem to care about each other. Even when Anthony gets left at the altar, Eloise just seems to be cracking jokes about it, and everyone's just like, oh, really? Do we have to go outside? Do we have to promenade? He's just been left at the altar. I don't get that they might not know the ins and outs of the situations, but still. Anthony's kind of right when he says that all of his family hate him. Benedict is like the only sibling that likes any of his other siblings. He hangs out with Colin, he kind of helps out Eloise, he teaches Anthony poetry. He's the only sibling who cares about the others. The others just don't give a damn about their family. Anthony says that none of his siblings like him. I don't think any of his siblings like each other, to be honest, apart from Benedict and Eloise get along, but they are a good sibling duo. They have some cute, funny moments together, moments that are genuinely funny and not cringe-inducing. The issue was just that they clearly wanted Benedict to be a comedy character, and I don't think it worked. Next along, Colin. Colin also appeared in season 2. I don't really have much else to say about him. Colin played the plot twist game, and I feel like I lost because it didn't make sense. So, Colin is travelling again, and then plot twist, he comes home. Colin sees Marina again, and then plot twist, starts flirting with Penelope. Colin's investing in a business, and then plot twist, he exposes the business. Colin argues with Will, and then plot twist, he brings all his buddies to Will's club. Colin tells Penelope how much he likes her, and then plot twist, he would never court Penelope. That last one, us book readers, I'm standing with you. They did us dirty. That was, oh no. Basically, in the book, he says something very similar. He says that he would never marry Penelope, but Penelope hears him, and she stands up to him, and Colin actually does feel bad about what he says. In this one, in this series, he just looked like a douche. He just, Penelope, you can do better. Honestly, I'm not one for normally saying that a character can do better, but honestly, Colin does not deserve her. Penelope needs to ditch this guy right now. But yeah, Colin had so many plot twists. They didn't really make sense to me. It was last season Colin had like personality and depth. He was taken in. He, whether or not you liked him, he did have a story arc. He did have a personality. I know some people found him very annoying. That's a fair enough criticism. But he was a character last season, whereas this season he kind of just exists. Colin, interestingly, I think is the only character where they kind of could have given him the exact same plot line and exact same plot beat, but just given him more screen time so that the plot lines had room to breathe, such as explaining the point when he decided to go from investing in Lord Featherington's business to exposing it and trying to get Lord Featherington to give all the money back. I would have really liked if that plot could have breathed a bit more. I think, again, Colin is a character with genuine depth. I think this season could have made him a more likeable character. Instead, all of his interactions are just very, very random. Also, he should have felt bad about what he said about Penelope, because I have loads of friends that I consider my friends that I would never date, and I will say I would never date them. It doesn't mean I don't care about them at all and wouldn't defend them to people, whereas he kind of just encourages all of his buddies to like laugh at Penelope, which is just, they could have had a scene where he felt some remorse for that, because people do say stupid things in front of people. He could have felt remorse. He better be grovelling next season, honestly. But yeah, I don't know why he was so cruel about her. I get that it was like a twist and it was supposed to be heartbreaking, but it didn't make sense at all, so I struggled to invest in that scene at all. Oh, also with Colin just appeared, so that just happened. But also I saw an article that hinted that there were going to be like steamy pollen scenes, Penelope and Colin, steamy pollen scenes, and I like to think the scenes that they were referencing were just the scenes where he holds her hand, and it's just really wholesome. So rather than all these like steamy, sexy scenes, it's just him holding her hand. It's just really cute. They could be the cutest couple, but honestly, Colin, step up your game. Daphne was also here. This season kind of highlights that she doesn't have much going for her. She doesn't have much of a personality. I don't think they brought her in too much. I can see that she is kind of turning into her mother. But yeah, Daphne was also around, but I don't have much to say about her. Eloise, like I said, is the not like other girls stereotype. I preferred her this season. Last season she was kind of just snarky and edgy, but this season talked more about her insecurities because she had to come out into society. So it kind of shows you why she does have this kind of edge to her. It shows you that she's kind of insecure, she's kind of living in Daphne's shadow, and it shows you sort of why she wants she doesn't like the more traditional path. Also, I appreciate that she doesn't judge Penelope for liking the parties and everything. She doesn't judge her for wanting to dance with people. I appreciate that. I do think Eloise was actually a step up this season. I still have issues with her. And one of the big issues is that her romance with Theo was very, very lazy. I felt it basically just establishes that they're attracted to each other and that they like each other. And I think if you're a fan of Eloise, yeah, you're going to be into that. But for me, I'm just not a huge Eloise fan, so I needed more to invest in the romance. They don't bond over anything in particular. You don't even really get to see them bond, I guess, about their political stuff, but it just establishes that they're attracted to each other and they like each other. And then Eloise later calls him the best thing that's ever happened to me, or whatever line she uses. There's just no room to breathe. I found it a repetition of what Anthony and Sienna were going through last season, of a, couple from mixed classes who wanted to be together but couldn't be together, except I think season 1 did a better job with Anthony and Sienna. I also kind of really wanted it to go in the direction of Eloise is like 17 and she gets a boyfriend who's into politics and causes and stuff, but then rather she like loves him and she adores him, and then she quickly works out that having a boyfriend into that sort of stuff is really, really tedious and really, really annoying. I would have loved it if they'd gone in that direction. They didn't, but it would have been funny. And it would have been relatable as well. In a series of like lords and ladies and this really surreal, glamorous, hyper stylized series, they could have done with something a bit more relatable. Yeah, the last scene with Eloise and Penelope felt really good because it felt natural. If I'll talk about it more when I talk about Penelope. I will be talking about Penelope for hours. I love her. But yeah, one thing I did find really weird about Eloise, so Eloise has been like going around and hanging out around the paper shop, and eventually exposed. No one brings that up. Like, none of her family are like worried that she's been sneaking out of the house and going into the city and stuff like that. No one like mentions it and be like, oh yeah, by the way, you're not allowed to go out anymore. That just felt weird to me. No one, she went out, but like, and it was kind of about how, I get that the whole thing was about how Penelope betrayed her and everything, but no one had any reaction to the fact that Eloisa should have been sneaking out the house and everything. To be honest, when that happened to her, I felt a bit bad for her, but not so bad, because it kind of felt like what her actions had kind of had consequences. They weren't the consequences that that she deserved, but it was nice to know that something that she had done in the series has had an impact on her character arc and her relationship with Penelope. Yes, I think the main thing was about Penelope, and I think Penelope made interesting decisions, which I will talk about. But I think that was quite a good move for that to make, quite good direction for that to go in. That the fact that something Eloise did had consequences, not fair ones, but still. Next up, okay, so that's kind of all the Bridgertons that I'm going to talk about. Next up, Portia and the Featheringtons, which I'm keeping that as a band name. When I never start a band, we're going to be Portia and the Featheringtons. I'll play piano. I can't play the piano, but that's the only one drums. They're the only ones where you can sit down. So, first of all, I want to say Philippa Featherington, you don't see much of this season, but I absolutely love that she and her husband are really, really in love with each other. It was kind of played off as a joke, but I think it worked. You see them together. He calls her my darling. You find out that they've been courting for about 10 months while she's been in mourning, and he's basically been waiting for her so he can marry her. It's really, really cute that she and Mr. Finch genuinely love each other, and they have this like stupid romance. I like that. You only see it for an episode or two, but I liked it. Portia Featherington. I will defend Portia Featherington to the day that I die. I will die in the field at dusk, bleeding from a gunshot wound, because I will duel any of you to the death over the fact that Portia Featherington is a badass. I love Portia Featherington. I get that she's supposed to be the bad guy. She is supposed to be the bad guy. Okay. Loads of people hate her because they seem to think that the show wants her to be a protagonist. No, she's supposed to be a bad guy. She's supposed to be annoying. She is so annoying. She brings so much to the show. She is such a great baddie. She's such a great comic relief baddie. And yet, she brings it at the end. So, Portia trying to con people with Lord Featherington, it, I think, works as a plot line. I wasn't so interested in the first half of the plot, the whole stuff with Prudence. I wasn't too into that. But her working with Lord Featherington and their kind of attraction, and her decision to ultimately leave him because she would rather stay with her daughters, is really, really heartwarming. It's a genuinely powerful moment. It was a twist that worked because it made sense. Because Portia genuinely does care about her daughters. She does have problems with Penelope, admittedly, but I think a lot of people do suspect, as do I. Portia and Penelope are more similar than they will admit, so maybe her issue with Penelope is that she sees herself in her too much. It's a strange relationship, but I think it can be quite an interesting one at times. I kind of wish they would spend a bit more time on it. But yeah, I think Portia Featherington's storyline here, it makes sense for her characters to always be plotting and stuff, maybe even if she doesn't have the right end of the stick. But I absolutely loved that last scene where she said that she and her daughters are a team. It's great to see a character who is such a good comic character can also be a really threatening character. She can be genuinely very, very nasty, but also at the end she can be very caring. I can't remember the actor's name. She was in Line of Duty, but she's great. She does all of that. She does the comedy, she does the threat, she does the drama. She does it all really, really well. It all works. It all makes sense for the character. Her strange her relationship with her daughters is very strained. It works as well because the show writers are aware that this is a difficult relationship, as opposed to the Bridgertons, where it tries to convince you that they're all really close, but then at random points it will be really, really tense and difficult, like Anthony saying that his siblings all hate him, even though we're supposed to believe that the Bridgertons are kind of this ideal family. So yeah, Portia is not meant to be likeable, but I just think she's a really well-written character. I love her. She's brilliant. That's the whole thing. She's not supposed to be likeable, so if you dislike her, it's because the show is working and it's doing it well. I think I mainly liked Portia's plotline because I didn't quite know where it was going. I didn't know what was happening, and that was more interesting to me, more interesting than the other things which were more predictable. Eloise and Theo weren't going to work. That was quite predictable. Anthony was going to end up with Kate, so the whole love triangle, very, very predictable. But Portia's line with Lord Featherington, I just found more engaging because I didn't quite know where it was going to go, so I did pay a bit more attention to that. I want to mention Prudence Featherington. I can't say I'm fussed about her. They could honestly write her out the show. I probably wouldn't notice. She's used as a comic relief. She's not particularly funny. It's kind of the same issue with Benedict, except at least I would say Prudence doesn't appear as much to become annoying. I kind of hope that they would go a bit more serious with her, especially as thinking her father's just died and she's really obviously really close with Philippa, but Philippa has just moved out. I kind of thought we would have a plotline where Prudence and Penelope sort of try and get along a bit more. I would have really liked that. It would have been good reflecting it with the Sharma sisters, who obviously really love each other and really get along. That would have been a really good kind of contrast to have with the two sets of sisters, of these two sisters who have always loved each other and are falling apart, against these two sisters who are kind of just learning to bond. I think that would have been a really interesting line. They didn't go along with that. They also don't address any of the serious stuff she goes through, such as missing her now married sister and her late father, the fact that she doesn't really get along with Penelope or her mother, to be honest, the pressure of her mother to marry, having to marry a man she doesn't actually love, but marry him for like money and control. They don't address any of the serious stuff they go through, which is a shame. Again, the show is not really willing to address serious issues, especially when it comes to women and sexism, and it's just all that more noticeable because the show thinks it's empowering and tries to be feisty and feminist, and it just isn't, because you can see with stuff like this, they just don't have the guts to, address these things. Whew, hour and a half. I'm getting there, guys. I'm getting there. Oh, wait, it's the Penelope stuff. Okay. Buckle your seatbelts. Penelope Featherington. Penelope needs to have a lie down to recover from the damage she has done to her back, because she is carrying this show. Penelope is the character I am most looking forward to seeing next series. It's nice that she's a character who has a continual arc. On reflection, so much of her arc in the first series, even though we only just found out at the end that she was Lady Whistledown, you can go back and kind of knowing that she's Lady Whistledown and incorporate it into her arc in that series. You can understand her actions a lot more. It continues into this series, as well as her affection for Colin, and those are both things which will continue to next series. So it's nice to have one that's kind of an ongoing arc. I am really hoping next series, even though she's argued with Eloise and she's made mistakes, I kind of want her to blossom out of the Bridgerton's shadow. Unfortunately, because the Bridgertons are kind of written to be so likeable, you don't realise, a lot of people don't realise that Penelope kind of is in their shadow. They kind of trample on her. You can have really, really likeable characters that trample on other characters. I don't think it's that well written, but I think that is her theme, that even though the Bridgertons are nice and everything and care about her, they kind of just stamp on her. They don't care about her as much as they think they do. So I would like to see her blossom next series. I'm really excited to see her next series. Her being more confident next season will make more sense. It just didn't make so much sense here in certain places. Penelope's story this season, again, is genuinely engaging, and it holds weight because we see her basically reaping what she's sown. It's a natural continuation from the last season, as I said. I appreciate that her love story with Colin wasn't too overwhelming. That was a major part of last season. I appreciate this season was much more about her relationship with Eloise and her role as Lady Whistledown and how those things come into conflict. I'm not huge on Eloise as a character, as I've mentioned, but her friendship with Penelope's friendship with Eloise is strong enough that I feel it when it's being tested, similar with the Sharma sisters, when their relationship is tested and eventually falls apart. It does hold weight. And I would say I have real sympathy with Penelope's decisions, because the show recognises what she's doing wrong. There are a lot of people who don't like Penelope, especially after she basically betrayed Eloise. I honestly think with Penelope, a lot of reason why people struggle with her. One, I get it, if you're a huge Eloise fan, you don't want to see Eloise hurt, you will defend her, fair enough. I think another issue with Penelope is that she, in the whole show, I think is the character with the most depth. She is the character with the most development and the most conflict, and I think people struggle to understand that. I think that's why people struggle with her. The fact that I view Penelope, I'll come into that in a bit, but she is the most complex character, which is some people struggle with, because most of these characters are very one-dimensional and very tropey, and Penelope sort of isn't. So there are some people saying that next season may be the Pollen story arc, so Penelope and Colin getting together. They might mix it up a bit. I'm not so sure, because this season has kind of received mixed reactions, but we'll see. Although they might want to do Pollen next season to kind of get people reinvested. I don't know whether or not the mixed reactions will make them divert more from the book or return back to the books. But I don't particularly want to see Pollen next season, admittedly, because I would like to see Penelope come out of her shell a little more before she starts pursuing a romance. And I would like for Colin's feelings to sort of start growing for Penelope. I could see series 3 being Benedict's storyline, and meanwhile, Penelope is kind of cold shouldering Colin after everything that's happened and after her fight with Eloise, and then Colin kind of realises that he misses her and that he has affection for her, and then series 4 is where Penelope and Colin, their romance starts to really blossom. I also think that if they get Penelope and Colin together too quickly, they'll basically be wasting away a really, really rich, slow burn romance, which a lot of people are interested in. I could see a lot of people watching it for Pollen and then stop watching the show. Again, Penelope is a very, very popular character, so I think as soon as she kind of gets her happy ending and kind of becomes what Daphne is now, a character who kind of just pops in and out, I do think a lot of people will stop watching the show. To be honest, potentially I could. Actually, no, I won't. I'll keep watching. I'll still be here. I'm kind of trash for this show. I've been complaining about it. I did enjoy this season, actually. Penelope, yes. Penelope works with Madame Delacroix this season. Madame Delacroix, I thought, was fine as a character. She could kind of do with a bit more development. I think it would have been more interesting to see her if Benedict hadn't. I think Benedict's most interesting option would have been an LGBTQ storyline. I stand by that. I think they should have done that. I think it was a real oversight that they didn't. I think another interesting option would have been his relationship and his breakup with Madame Delacroix being explored a bit more. They do seem to break up at some point, but it only kind of lasts 10 seconds and neither of them are particularly fussed about it. You could have stretched that out a bit more. In a series where kind of the plot is so sparse and random, it's really strange that they have a lot of setup for a lot of storylines that they don't pursue. So plots kind of come and go sporadically. Madame Delacroix, her scenes with Penelope are pretty good. I like that they bond over being working women. I like that they don't fall out, that they're not competitive, that they kind of support and respect each other. Madame Delacroix, she wasn't particularly annoying. She kind of asked Penelope to boost her business, but she wasn't like annoying. They didn't turn it into a joke or anything. It was kind of nice. It was nice to see them together. That, I think, was genuine feminism in the show, of seeing these two working women supporting each other and depending on one another, becoming good friends in the meantime. That was genuinely a good thing that happened in the show. I will say there is something really satisfying in the books. The fact that in the books Penelope gets away with writing Lady Whistledown for about 10 years, I think. She writes Lady Whistledown for a long, long time. Maybe it's like 8 years or something. And no one ever finds her out. No one discovers her. So it's kind of annoying that in this season, 2 people found Penelope out quite quickly together after a couple of years. And Penelope accidentally outed herself. I kind of found that a bit annoying. I would have preferred Penelope to kind of keep getting away with it, but it'll depend on where they take it next season, which I'm a little bit concerned for, but I think they could take it interesting places, so I will choose to have faith in them. Misplaced faith. Yeah, with Penelope, as I mentioned, loads of people see Penelope as basically a manipulative sociopath who likes to play the victim. I honestly see Penelope as, I think this is what Penelope went through. I think I can resonate with her quite a lot. Clearly, people have been talking about Penelope behind her back for basically her entire life, making comments about her weight, her appearance and everything. And she is kind of known. She knows what it is to be the victim of gossip. You see it with her family as well. Her family make nasty comments about her. So I believe that Penelope, maybe as an act of bitterness or resentment, decided to write Lady Whistledown to kind of get back at people. She was angry and she wrote it, and then she basically found out that it could be profitable and in a way therapeutic, because it was a way of getting out this stress of people saying nasty things about her. So it wasn't necessarily a right thing to do, and it wasn't a great thing to do, but there was a motivation for it. It gave her a voice. She's a character who, again, she kind of lives under her mother's thumb. She lives under the Bridgerton's thumb. She doesn't really blossom for herself that much. So it was a kind of way of expressing herself in a kind of neutral way, in a way that at first didn't help people. But unfortunately, I think with Lady Whistledown, it basically has become something that she cannot control anymore. There is such a headhunt for Lady Whistledown now that she can't. This season found her in circumstances, especially with her thing with Eloise, she could not control what was going on anymore. So even though she knows that, and also because people are turning against her and it's becoming more isolating, almost Whistledown is the only thing that she can depend on to escape, to deal with the stress. It's making her money, it's an outlet for her. So yes, what she's doing is wrong, but it's kind of being fed by all this pressure, and it's unfortunately she basically created something that has basically got out of hand. So I view Penelope as a kind of victim of her own circumstance, where she may have been bullied. She was forced into silence, which she didn't want. She tried to express herself, and then through that expressing herself and letting out some of her anger, she unfortunately kind of turned against her. But now Lady Whistledown is kind of the only thing that she has to depend on. It's the only thing that she can rely on, because Penelope is the only person that Penelope can rely on. It remains problematic, but it's Penelope's only means of escape. And this is what I mean when I view Lady Whistledown. I view Penelope as kind of the character with the most depth in the entire series. That's why I think Penelope works. That's why I love her. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on Penelope. I managed to cap that at about 10 minutes, I think. I need to crack on with this. I mentioned I was going to talk about the Queen. I honestly think the Queen works as a comic relief character more than she does as a drama character. Her involvement kind of enhanced the melodrama of the series, which I really wasn't into. So she helps to form Edwina as the Diamond. She helps to plan Edwina's wedding. I wasn't really into any of that stuff. So the Queen's kind of existence only made things more melodramatic than they needed to be. The Queen's scenes with the King are very powerful, I think, because they're unexpected. They feel very real. They give reasons for her behaviour. It's also really interesting to see a love story which has deteriorated, not because of the actions of the characters, but because of things like illness, because of things out of the hands of the characters. That is an interesting thing to introduce. They only introduce it briefly. I think it does give the Queen a lot more depth. so having to live with a husband who has Alzheimer's, you kind of understand the Queen a lot better. But I would kind of hope that outside of those few scenes, I think having very few of those scenes works because it keeps it brief, rather than kind of trying to force the Queen into a storyline. So outside of those few scenes, she should kind of remain a comic relief character as opposed to a character who's actually involved in the drama. She works really well as an outside observer. I can understand maybe in the first episode the whole issue with her choosing a diamond. I kind of get that, but other than that, I don't think she particularly works as a kind of drama character, which this season kind of was trying to force her more into the drama side of things as opposed to being comic relief with the odd serious moment, which I think she's better suited to. Also, she has a storyline where she suspects Eloise. It was all right, and it led to interesting stuff with Penelope and Eloise. It kind of, again, helped to make Penelope trapped by what she had created. However, her search for Lady Whistledown didn't make any sense because there's a bit where she's looking for people who talk to Edwina, and we see, Eloise and Penelope in that mix, and it's like, oh, so one of these ladies has to be Lady Whistledown, but we don't know why. I don't know why they said, oh, it has to be one of these ladies. So it's just to kind of amp up the tension of one of the ladies might be found out, but I don't know why that scene was there other than amping up the tension because it doesn't actually make any sense. Okay. Other characters were also around. Okay, Marina was introduced. Upon hearing Marina Wood's going to come back, I was a bit worried because she got so much closure last season. I didn't mind seeing her, but I don't think it actually added much to the story apart from maybe gearing Colin towards Penelope, but again, Colin's behaviour doesn't actually make sense this season, so it ultimately didn't add that much for me. She had enough closure last season. I kind of liked her. I also really liked that her husband has a hobby that annoys his wife. That is couple goals. He's also a great dad. I don't know how much they're going to follow the book series in terms of what Mr. Crane's, kind of how he ends up and everything, just because Marina seems kind of content with married life. But so I thought her return was fine. It wasn't necessary, but it was okay. But they called her a fan favourite. I don't know if I would call Marina a fan favourite coming back. I mean, I know that people liked her, but like a fan favourite, I don't know. I don't know who was advertising this show. There's Will, the boxer who owns the Gentleman's Club. He was fine as well. I liked him last season, but because of the pacing of the show, I kind of forgot that he was in this season still. So when we'd pop up, I'd be like, oh, you're still here. So he exists as a good character, but I can't get invested in anything that he's doing. I don't really care about the club. I do like that he stood up to Lord Featherington, but again, it kind of just helped to make Colin's just nonsensical storyline keep going. I didn't care. Lord Featherington also existed this series. I thought he was quite a good villain. He did quite a good descent into villainy, whereby at the beginning you don't really know much about him. He's nice and charming, and by the end he's like the bad guy, and you're really glad that Portia got one over on him. He got his comeuppance. It was a satisfactory storyline. It wasn't an excellent storyline, but it was satisfying. It made sense. It was fine. It was good. It wasn't the best character, but I think he was fine. The young Bridgertons kind of exist. They're gonna have to, I think they're pulling Gregory into it a bit more, which is kind of a good idea. You do kind of need to start involving the younger ones a bit, especially because Francesca she's getting a bit older now, so she's gonna have to have storylines in the next few series. They don't annoy me, but they don't do anything, so they're gonna have to start doing stuff soon. It's an issue with the show that they kind of just introduce lots and lots of characters and you can't really care about all of them. The young Bridgertons are a victim of that. I can't really care about the young Bridgertons that much, but I do suspect they're going to try and do more with them. Okay, I thought a nice way to end this review, it's going to be over 2 hours, isn't it? It's going to be more than 2 hours. My throat hurts. I need a drink. But a way to end this review, I was going to talk about my favourite moments in the series. I don't think there were that many great moments in the series, but I thought I'd talk about my favourite ones. a couple of honorary mentions before I get to my top fives list. One honorary mention goes to the barn dance at Bridgerton House. That was lovely. It was very cute. It was adorable. It was nice to see all the characters together. I thought that was really, really cute. Another honorary mention goes to when Mr. Finch and Philippa Featherington see each other and he calls her darling. And it's, again, it's kind of funny, but just their little thing, a little romance, kind of sweet. You can have really sweet plot lines that only exist in a few scenes and are very brief, but I still think added to the story, added a bit, a tiny bit of depth to the characters. That they're annoying characters, but they're in love, and that's cute. So that's an honorary mention. But the final five. Number 5 is Eloise's final scene with Penelope, where they argue. I didn't so much like Eloise finding out that Penelope was Lady Whistledown, but the scene had a lot of build-up. The characters I thought, were both sympathetic with Eloise being betrayed, but Penelope having reasons for why she betrayed Eloise, and their kind of falling out makes sense with Eloise being very upset. I don't get the whole thing about how Theo was the best thing that's ever happened to her. I don't really care for that. But Eloise is upset that Penelope has lied to her, and Penelope is kind of upset that I think she's right that Eloise is kind of no talk and doesn't do anything, whereas Penelope doesn't talk but she does stuff. I think it was a really good scene, really confrontations between the characters, and I'm hoping it will lead to some really good stuff next season. I'm hoping I think they'll make up at some point. I'm hoping it's really, really natural. It just really, really worked. And again, their relationship is important enough that it had weight when it started to fall apart. I cared about it. Number 4, Lady Danbury and Violet Bridgerton bursting into laughter when they don't know what to do. Need I say more? I love these ladies. This moment was actually quite funny. Yeah. Best moment number 3 was when Portia Featherington decided to stay with her daughters when she stood up to Lord Featherington. It was really nice to see her defend her family. It was nice to give that character a bit of depth. It was nice to see Lord Featherington get what he deserves. I will maintain Portia Featherington. I find a genuinely strong character. She's very well acted. She has layers to her. She has development. I stand by her. And she's a developed enough character that I would believe that she would abandon her daughters, but to find out that she chose not to is important to me. I like that scene a lot. One of the most powerful scenes in the entire series, just to see him get what he deserves and Portia kind of be on the right side for once. Number 2 for best scene in the series is when Kate comforts Edwina because Anthony didn't propose. Both of them care about each other so much. It's so beautiful to watch them. Also, I know that it's important that Kate is rubbing oil into Edwina's hair. It's some kind of, I believe it's a Tamil or Desi tradition. Again, I'm really sorry. I don't know much about these cultures, but that's just a nice little thing to weave into there where it's not talked about. It's just there in the background showing their cultural heritage. And it's just a beautiful scene because these women mean so much to each other. They're so important to each other. I loved seeing them together. And it kind of shows you the pressure that Edwina is under, how Kate would do anything for her. Yeah, that was just a great scene. And number 1 for my favourite scene in the series, which is the best scene in the series, is any time Newton is on screen. Newton's such a good boy. Oh yeah. So these are my top moments of the series. It's very interesting that only Eloise and Violet are the only Bridgertons which made it into the top scenes of the series. The top 3 don't feature any Bridgertons. Even Violet is kind of the parent. She's not one of the mains. And Eloise and Penelope. It was more about Penelope, to be honest. I love Penelope. I love her. So that was interesting. But yeah, into the conclusion. Let's see if I can cap this under 2 hours. Ugh. Sorry, my throat hurts. I'm really sorry if you've sat and listened to this. I really appreciate it if you've sat and listened to all of this. Well done. This has not been my best podcast. My throat's sounding kind of rough at the moment. Anyway, final thoughts on the series. I think maybe the charm of the first series just wore off for me, which is why I didn't enjoy the series as much. You can kind of hear that I didn't enjoy it as much. But you know what? I see loads of people have enjoyed it. Loads of people still feel the charm of it. So fair enough. If you enjoyed it, like great. I've talked about things like sexism, the lack of LGBTQ representation, like big issues like that. But those are issues which are prevalent throughout all sorts of media. I wouldn't say it's particularly egregious here. So if you still enjoy the series in spite of those things, that's fair enough. I'm not going to hold that against you. It still functions as escapism. It's still a very, very beautiful series. It still looks amazing. I thought the glamour was too much, but for you personally, if it wasn't, that's fine. I didn't like that it was surreal and melodramatic. If you like surreal and melodramatic stuff, then you will enjoy it. There are lots of really good moments. Well, I think there are a few really, really good moments in the series. There are lots and lots of characters. And I'll be watching next series because there are some characters that I am still invested in, that I still care about. I'm hoping the mixed reactions of this series will kind of help them to improve some stuff. However, one thing I will say, hot take, I prefer the stupid fluffiness of the book over the predictable melodrama of the TV series. I would say for series 1, definitely the book was better. Series 1, definitely the TV series was better. Sorry. Oh my god, I'm getting distracted. I got a text. Yes, hot take. I think series 1, the TV series was better than the book. Series 2, the book was better than the TV series. The book is light, it's fluffy, it knows what it is. The series takes itself way too seriously, it's way too melodramatic, and that just annoys me. Let's see, the series has the tone of a drama, but not the content or stakes or suspense. So it basically just left me disappointed. I wasn't too on board with the shipping stuff. I wasn't too into the stuff. I mean, if you can watch it without trying to invest in it as a drama, then I get that if you like it. For me, the tone was just all over the place. It didn't make sense, and that bothered me a lot. It won't bother other people so much, but it bothered me a great deal. I will also admit the book does have a lot of issues. It's not great, and the book has issues with consent. There is a moment where basically Kate doesn't want to consummate the marriage, but Anthony sort of says that he wants to anyway. So it's a real consent issue. Kate does consent before they go to bed. But that is an issue. That's a problematic scene, admittedly. That's a huge issue in the book for me. It does not appear at all in the series, so consent actually isn't a problem in the series. It was a problem last series, but not this series. So that is one thing that the TV series undeniably has over the book. The TV series also has a wider range of characters, but I would just say the tone of the books isn't an issue for me. It's light, it's fluffy. They're not great, but I would rather read something that was terrible but really, really light, as opposed to something that thinks it's really, really good and isn't as good as it thinks it is. That is the main issue for me. So I would actually say last series, definitely the series was better than the book. This series, definitely the book was better than the series. I've repeated myself so much. If I took out all the... It's amazing that I'm complaining that the show is too repetitive, and yet I've repeated myself so much during this review. If you took out all the repetitions, the review would honestly be an hour and a half. So, yeah. But that was my take on Bridgerton. It was enjoyable enough. I enjoyed some parts of the series. I'll be back for next series. I just wanted to highlight a few of the problems I found with the series. Let me know if you'd like me to review series 1. I honestly quite like to watch it again just to know what I liked about that series so much that I didn't find in this series. But that is my take on Bridgerton. Thank you for listening to Beaver curling Logtossers, Adele and Michelle, and let me know what you would like me to review next. Bye!